So having described the legalistic standing that people would live in, and then contrasting that with this standing in grace, how can someone go from A to B? Having looked at, I guess, the diagnosis, and then
Right.
seeing what the goal, how is that transition made?
I think that there's two keys to it at least. I mean, just off the top of my head. Number one, it's simple faith. Just deciding to put your faith not in yourself, not in your own efforts to make yourself right with God, nor in your vows and resolutions, but make your choice to put your faith in Jesus. I love what Spurgeon says in one place. He says the problem with many people is that, and I'm paraphrasing him, of course, not quoting him, but he says the problem with many people is that they're trying to believe. And he says the Bible nowhere tells you to try and believe. Don't try to have faith, just have faith. And put your faith in Jesus. So that's one aspect of it. Grace is received, and we notice this very plainly in the Scriptures. Grace is not received through an institution such as the church. It's not received through a mediator such as a pastor or a priest. It's received by a direct faith relationship with Jesus Christ. Then there's a second aspect to it that's related, but it's distinct enough that I think it merits mention, and that's humility. Pride and grace are utterly opposed. It says very plainly a few times, right?
Yeah.
God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And that contrast is very important to understand. Pride instinctively looks to self and looks to self's accomplishments. And pride almost thinks this way, Mike. It says, I don't want to be blessed unless other people can know that it was to my credit that I was blessed. You know, and so there has to be a deliberate embrace of humility, rejection of pride. Otherwise, it's just a life incompatible with grace.
So faith in Christ, and a deliberate rejection of pride.
Yes, and an embrace of humility, willing to. Well, I like, again, I'll quote a little line from William Newell in that, A Few Words About Grace. He says, to consent to be loved while yet unworthy is the great secret. To reckon, and that's a big part of the faith, right? Yeah. And humility combined together there. Okay, I'm not even going to try to earn this love or be deserving of it whatsoever, and I'm not going to doubt it either. I'm going to consent to receive and embrace and enjoy God's love, all the while knowing I'm unworthy of it, but knowing that that doesn't matter because it's given under grace and not under law.
Yeah, I guess to refer to even last night as we were worshiping and singing, there's that line that we sing, I'm so unworthy and still you love me.
Yes, yes.
That really just hit me as it really connected the themes that we're considering and how they're not just meant to be learned, but sung and thanking God for them and living them out.
You know, I think that for the pastor or for the person who has an interest in Christian ministry, they should be prayerful before God how grace can be a large theme of their ministry. Now, in recent years, there's been a lot of emphasis on gospel-centered ministry and such, and that's great. You'll notice that this idea of gospel and grace, well, not being exactly identical, they overlap incredibly. And this is a good thing. They really do. And that emphasis, it's a good thing. And again, just to consent to be loved. I love that line in that song as well.
Yeah. In closing, where can we, I guess, read or listen or learn more about this topic of grace? I guess my first very direct question is, where can we get your book? And secondly, what other books can you point us towards?
You know, my book doesn't have terribly wide distribution, but if somebody went to my website, enduringword.com, they could order it on there, and we sell it pretty cheap. I can't remember the price, but it's sold online. I think it can also be received through Amazon. People can order it on Amazon.com. That's another very handy way for people to order it. And actually, it's more convenient if they just order it off Amazon. But if they order it from my website, that's fine too.
Noted. We'll have a link.
Absolutely.
But seeing as how you're talking about humility, who else writes about grace?
You know, other resources, there was a flood of good books on grace a number of years ago. like maybe about 10 years ago, Chuck Smith did an outstanding book on grace and the whole idea of grace.
Why grace changes
Why
everything?
grace changes everything, exactly. Jerry Bridges did a great book. I want to say it's called Transforming Grace. I think that was the title of it.
Okay, sounds familiar. I haven't
Yeah,
read it.
really good. Chuck Swindoll wrote a book I think called Grace Awakening. Now, the best single book I've ever read is a little more scholarly bent, and it kind of satisfied my need to really want to understand the theology of grace.
Okay.
It's an older book, out of print, of course, but it's called Grace in the New Testament by James Moffat. Written, I don't know, 1910, 1920. I'm sure it can be got at used bookstores, and who knows, maybe it's scanned out on the internet somewhere in some archive, because it's obviously out of print. That is an excellent book. Of course, dig up sermons by Charles Spurgeon on grace. He speaks mightily to the role and the work of the grace of God. And I can't recommend enough William Newell and how he deals with grace in his exposition in Romans chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8. Those chapters, he deals brilliantly, especially that one section that I quote in my book. You can just buy my book and get that taken there. But his commentary is called Romans Verse by Verse, William Newell, and I strongly recommend it.
Okay, brilliant.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And,
Thank you, Mike.
I guess
Pleasure.
we shake hands at the
isn't
end of
this
the interview.
nice?
I don't
It's
know.
very proper.
It's my
Yes,
first,
it is.
my first interview.
Thank you.
Okay, well,
All right.
God bless you.
Bye-bye.